Many of you dealing with extremely hot conditions. Others will see flooding rain starting tomorrow. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here with you at Meteo Mundo on this Tuesday afternoon. I hope you're doing well. Coming up, we're going to talk about the brutal heat many of you have been describing to me and just how hot it's been on this Tuesday afternoon. Others have seen some healthy thunderstorms develop. We'll highlight that. And of course, what's happening in the Southwest Caribbean and all of that moisture driving northward in the areas of the Caribbean that could see some flooding rains starting tomorrow. As we get started, the first thing I want to do, I have an announcement for you guys, and that's to thank you so much. We hit 10,000 subscribers here at Meteo Mundo this morning. I am grateful. I am humbled. I am appreciative that you've entrusted me in your forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas. Thank you so much for helping to build the Meteo Mundo weather community. Next stop, 100,000 subscribers. And I think we can get there by the end of the year. Again, thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. And thank you so much for liking the video as we get started. And we'll do that with what's happening on this Tuesday afternoon. We'll start with the rain and then we'll talk about the heat. For my friends in Jamaica right now, showers and storms continue to develop throughout the afternoon hours here of this Tuesday. You can see those really impressive lightning strikes right now over the northern side of the island, especially near Negril and Savannah Lamar and Montego Bay on northward across the island, Ocho Rios. And then we've seen a few storms crop up over Port Antonio in the eastern side of the island. A little bit drier, Kingston and Portmore, Spanish Town, but the opportunity is going to be there for the remainder of the afternoon hours. There's other storms near the mainland as well that will be moving from west to east. So again, pretty good chance for some storms across portions of the island the remainder of today. Elsewhere across the island, if you haven't seen some rain, it's been some pretty brutal heat, and we'll look at that coming up in just a second. On over to what's going on right now in the Dominican Republic. You can see the showers and storms developing in this area as well. Now look, it's a little bit more isolated in nature. We have a few storms in the northwest tip of Haiti, a few trying to develop near Santiago de los Caballeros, and certainly the opportunity for additional showers and storms here. Again, they may not plume up and be as widespread as Jamaica, but that opportunity will be there, especially the eastern tip of Cuba and portions of the Turks and Caicos. It's actually been a relatively dry day for Puerto Rico in the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands. It's excessively hot. There's a heat advisory that's currently in place, so it's crazy because we're going to be talking about some very hefty rainfall totals in this area starting tomorrow. But right now, it's really much more about the heat. And the same can be said for most of the Leeward Islands as well. It's been a relatively quiet day for places like Anguilla and Barbuda and Antigua and Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Guadeloupe areas off towards the south. Just a little bit more moisture down here right now. Not really much rain, but I can't rule out a passing shower for Dominica and Martinique. But it's mainly dry right now for St. Lucia and Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we've dried out a bit again in Trinidad and Tobago. And again, coming up in just a minute, stick with me here. We're going to be taking a look at some of your temperatures and your feels like temperatures as well. Not a lot of lightning strikes. You can see our live lightning data over the ABC Islands. But again, we have this huge cluster of storms just off towards your west, and certainly some hefty downpours and a brisk east wind is still going to be in the forecast over the ABC Islands the next couple of days. Not really concerned about flooding in that area, but we could see certainly some heftier storms. Now, unfortunately, out in our western zones, the areas that have been extremely dry, that's generally been the case again for today. All of the Yucatan, Belize, Nicaragua, Honduras, most of Central America. We've had a couple of storms try and fire up near portions of the Cayman Islands, but they really haven't gone over the islands in general. Now, one area that has seen, again, excessive thunderstorms on this Tuesday afternoon down here in portions of the Northwest Bahamas. I lost my lightning data just at the end, so let me pull it back here and talk about these storms that have blown up right over Andros and New Providence on this Tuesday afternoon. And I am talking about a hefty storm over New Providence right now, especially the eastern side of the island, Nassau, Paradise Islands, the South Beach areas, basically the central and the eastern sides of the island. A ton of lightning, extremely heavy rainfall, even the opportunity to get a little bit of hail as well. So if you live in this area, let me know. I'm going to take off the visible satellite imagery here, and I'm actually going to put on the radar data, and we're going to take a look at that. And you can see this ball of extremely intense weather that's right over the New Providence area right now, and certainly Andros. Let me switch that, and again, you can just see the full radar there. So we've kind of translated some of the nastier storms from Grand Bahama and Abaco into Andros and New Providence, and eventually Eleuthera, and areas off towards the south, including places like Arthurstown and Georgetown, could be in for this. But this is a really nasty complex of storms right now over those areas. And again, even some hail could come along for the ride. So let me know in the comment section below if you've been seeing that. So the next thing I want to do is we've got to take a look at the heat. So that's the next step here in the process. And then we're going to get into that plume of tropical moisture. So I'm going to bring on, first of all here, we're going to throw on the temperatures, but that's not really what I want to focus on. I want to focus on the heat index, the feels like temperature in your area this afternoon. Take a look at some of these numbers. It's extremely area dependent, but if you've been dry, there's a very good chance that your feels like temperature today has been well above 100 degrees. We have a 103 in Cancun, a 105 in Cozumel, in Belize. It feels like it's 109 in San Ignacio and 111 right now in Belize City. By the way, 110 degrees Celsius, 110 degrees Fahrenheit is 43.3 degrees Celsius. It gives you an idea. This is brutal heat. This is dangerous heat, friends. You really need to be cautious here. When you see these Fahrenheit numbers above 100 and in some areas well above 110 in Central America, please be very cautious. There's not a lot of rain in the forecast for this part of our viewing area here. And even to West End, Cayman Islands, 108 right now. You got to get into the rain like Montego Bay, where they're down to 78. Again, just to show you this, the West End reporting site, it's 91 degrees with a dew point of 79. The heat index is 108, and that is a combination of the temperature and the dew point. Basically, it's what does it feels like to the human body when you step outside. That's what these numbers are. It's extremely hot. And I was telling folks who were commenting in yesterday's video that the temperatures weren't extremely horrible, upper 80s to the lower 90s, but the humidity values are so outrageous right now with dew points that are in the upper 70s, lower 80s. You know, you get the idea out of Aruba right now. It feels like 100, but the air temperature is 88. It's not the worst thing in the world. But again, exceptionally hot through portions of the Windward Islands as well. Trinidad, it feels like 100 because their dew point is 75. Again, we have some triple-digit heat indices through portions of the rest of the Leeward Islands. It's been extremely hot over Puerto Rico. These numbers are actually a little bit lower than what they were earlier in the day. If I stair-step this back, you're going to see some triple-digit numbers there. Heat advisory was in place, which is crazy because we're talking about excessive rain on the way, but then we're also talking about, through the Dominican Republic, some spots like Santo Domingo where it feels like 108 degrees. So that's the scenario that's happening outside right now. Let's break down what's going to be going on with all of this moisture. So again, into the Southwest Caribbean we go. We're starting to see that moisture plume up. We're starting to see it feed to the north and to the east. Now, what's been happening in places like Jamaica today, it's a little bit more localized in nature. It's not really the core of that moisture streaming in. And when I show you guys the water vapor imagery here, and I loop this up, what you are going to see is the influence of some drier air in red on this map trying to move back into the Northwest Caribbean. In yesterday's video, I talked how there's going to be a pretty sharp line of this moisture on the western side, and the eastern side is going to be more moisture laden. And we're kind of seeing that play out right now. I mean, just kind of taking a look at things right now. Again, you can just see this moisture feed start to plume up here, and then all of this heavier activity off east. So this is the area that I'm really going to be watching for the deeper layer of moisture to develop. Now look, it doesn't mean that Kingston and Jamaica in general isn't going to get some heavier downpours out of this, but as far as the potential flooding rains, we're really focused on Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, maybe portions of the Leeward Islands, and the Turks and the Caicos. Again, you can see the influence of that drier air that's going to be moving in. So it's, if nothing else, it's going to cut off the western areas a little bit quicker than the eastern zones, and those areas might see that rain linger a little bit deeper into the week. So let's break this down. The areas that should be on alert for potential flooding rains: Haiti and the Dominican Republic, especially. Puerto Rico is included in that conversation as well. The U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, portions of the Leeward Islands, and the Turks and Caicos. I've taken the ABC Islands and Jamaica off the list. Was never really concerned about flooding rains in the ABC Islands, but brisk easterly winds, and they're near that origin of development, they could get some excessive downpours, fast moving rain. And then Jamaica, again, is kind of on the western edge of where we're going to see some of the excessive rainfall. So let's get into it, friends. We'll look at all the different models. We'll start off with the GFS. First thing is, everything is still on track from what we talked about in yesterday's conversation. Okay, nothing has stood out to me as being a glaring change in how this is going to evolve. We are not going to have a closed area of circulation in the Caribbean. Okay, but we're still going to have some wind energy and a heck of a lot of moisture that's going to be streaming into these areas starting as early as tomorrow morning. The first thing to note, again, even on the GFS model, how wide we're talking about this excessive rain could be. I mean, you're taking a look at an area here that could be nearly 1,000 miles wide with fairly solid rainfall and even additional rain a little bit farther off towards the east. So this is a very sloppy, a very wide system that's going to be pulling through. So let's start off with the timing. As we get into tomorrow morning, okay, we're going to start to see the northern edge of this moisture feed into areas like Jamaica, potentially, but especially Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, and again, portions of the Leeward Islands as well. Once the rain sets in, it's going to be sticking around for a while. There will be some, gustier downpours coming in. We're going to see some wind gusts from time to time, 20 to 30 miles an hour, but it's just a very wet forecast the rest of Wednesday, Thursday, and into Friday. The influence of that trough should begin to wane a bit as the energy pulls up to the north on Saturday and Sunday, but there's still going to be that southerly low-level surface winds that will feed in additional moisture, and some downpours in these areas are still possible right on through Sunday as well. But the main concentration is going to be later tomorrow and then Thursday and Friday, and then we'll just have to see how that moisture and the quality of it plays out for Saturday and Sunday. But again, excessive rainfall throughout this duration is absolutely possible. So again, on the GFS model, we'll start with Jamaica. You're not going to see a lot of rain here. We're going to get kind of a slug of moisture coming in tomorrow, and then a lot of that pulls away. I'll show you the NAM model and the European models coming up. They're wetter for Jamaica, so if you've been looking for more rain in this area, again, you want to hope that this is not the GFS that is the one that comes true. You're going to want the NAM or the European model. But again, the bullseye and the really only difference is how far west the rain goes, guys. All of the models are really concentrated in the areas that I've been focused in on. You can see how wet it's going to be over Hispaniola. Certainly all modes of potential flash flooding will be into play. At this point in time, there's no flash flood advisories, watches, or warnings, but more than likely those will start to be hoisted tomorrow in some way, shape, or form with the potential amount of rain that we're going to get. But you can just expect a very wet forecast for Santo Domingo and Punta Cana and Santiago de los Caballeros and Port-au-Prince and Lacai and Puerto Plata at least through Friday afternoon. All right. And again, it might be beginning to wane Friday and into Saturday and Sunday, but not completely dry. It's going to be the same scenario for our friends in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Again, when I pause this and I go back in time, as we get into tomorrow morning, this is 10 a.m., you can start to see the rain move in. And once it sets up shop, it's just going to be very heavy on and off. It may also be fairly persistent as well. There may not be a lot of breaks in this action. The National Weather Service out of Puerto Rico, out of San Juan, has already mentioned the fact that more than likely there is going to be some flash flooding out of this. They're talking about landslides, they're talking about mudslides, they're talking about fast river rises, and again, the opportunity for flash flooding in this area, especially focused on late Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Again, they haven't, at least as of this recording, issued any flood watches at this point in time, but those could be on board fairly quickly into our Wednesday here as this plays out. And again, nothing that I've seen over the last 24 hours is really much different here as far as the potential for the rain, and the timing of the rain. Now, again, the Turks and Caicos, if the GFS plays out, you would certainly have some downpours, but look at that axis of moisture generally stay just a little bit farther off towards your east. Where again, now we're talking about the Leeward Islands, Anguilla and St. Kitts and Nevis, and Antigua and Barbuda and Montserrat and Saba and St. Martin, all within this potential to see some heavier downpours and at least the opportunity for some flooding. It's not nearly as high this far east, but can't rule it out at this point in time. Again, good downpours. Now, the same situation plays in. When we don't get the rain, it's going to be excessively hot. There is some Saharan dust in play here as well. You get south of Guadeloupe and Dominica and you start to dry out. Martinique, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, all relatively drier with just a few spotty showers in the forecast. Again, the ABC Islands, I'm not too concerned about the flooding, but look again, the origin point of all this moisture is just to your south and to your west. You're going to have a brisk easterly surface wind throughout this entire period, and quick moving downpours for Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao are absolutely going to be in the forecast for us here, and they could total a few inches of rain before it's all said and done. Now again, our northwest areas are virtually dry. Unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of rain for the folks that desperately need it. In Belize, Honduras, and Nicaragua, the Yucatan, the Cayman Islands, will start to see the energy move away from the northwest and central Bahamas. So kind of the last gaps of these heftier storms today, maybe an isolated storm for tomorrow, but we'll be drying out a bit after that. Friends, I just want to let everyone know again that not only can you subscribe to the channel, but you can become a member as well. Just click that join button there and you'll have the opportunity to get some custom badges and emojis when we go live. So thank you so much for subscribing. If you click that bell as well, you'll also get the notifications and when we're live here at Meteo Mundo, and I appreciate your support in that way. Okay, back over to the models. So we look at the GFS. Let's look at the NAM. So it's the same scenario, same timeline, but I want you to notice on the NAM model here when I bring it up, and while I'm doing so, if you haven't subscribed yet, do me that big favor and click the subscribe button. On the NAM model, it's just a sloppier system in general. It's a little bit more widespread, and it does bring Jamaica a bit more into play. I'm just going to kind of show you the broader perspective of this model. And again, there's going to be model differences here. And the European and the GFS do bring places like Kingston and Savannah Lamar and Negril and Montego Bay, the entire island, more into some rain. Now, again, it's a little bit more broad, but there's still ample moisture on this model over Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, where they're all kind of in that same range of outputs as far as rainfall totals, and I'll show you that coming up. So in essence, the NAM is actually an even wetter system because the rain is more widespread, but they still have concentrations of very heavy rain over the areas that I just mentioned, and you can see some of that moisture fitting in. I mentioned Martinique kind of to the north. Again, southeast surface winds flowing in, and that surface trough, all of that energy is going to get fed into the eastern side. And even if we get more rain out of the NAM, it's still going to dry things out west to east here because that drier air will continue to be an influence. We've talked about the rain. I want to look at the winds as well. Again, I'm not expecting there, and there's just not going to be really an opportunity to see anything wrapped up in nature as far as a closed center of circulation here. But when I pull this out over the next 5 days and I loop this and you're looking at your wind gusts, you're just going to see a very healthy wind field. It's going to just take a moment here for this to kind of come into play. But you're going to see on our legend a lot of 20 and 30 mile an hour wind gusts, and that's exactly what I expect. Downpours with 20 to 30 mile an hour winds. If there was going to be anything trying to develop, okay, in a closed low circulation, it's going to be north and east of our area, east of the Bahamas, south of Bermuda. But that's a very weak signature, even on the GFS, which is kind of the most robust at trying to develop something in that area. So again, gusty winds, very heavy rainfall. Let's take a look at the amount of rain on the European model. And friends, this first slide is going to be in millimeters. So what you're looking at here, when you get to the bright reds, is right around 100 millimeters. Now notice again, Jamaica is a little bit more in play with the European model in getting some of that heavier rain. I think it's going to be much more spotty in nature. Over there towards Jamaica, even on the European model, it's still going to be more concentrated over Hispaniola, but it's also a little bit drier for Puerto Rico and the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands and the Leeward Islands on the European. So again, just that concentration of moisture is slightly farther off towards the west here. You're looking at, again, a lot of areas within that swath, maybe 100 up to 150 millimeters. And again, 25 millimeters is 1 inch of rain. So now you're looking at inches, and you're looking at around 4 to 5, maybe 6 inches of rain in a lot of spots. And I think what we're going to see is widespread 3 to 4 inch rainfall totals, but localized maybe up to 8. Because there's so much moisture in the atmosphere, it's not going to be too hard or difficult for these storms to train on each other, meaning they develop one on top of another, and there will be some pockets of excessive rainfall within this wider shield of heavier rain. So it's not going to surprise me if we get 6, 8 inches of rain in some spots out of this. This is why, again, the flood threat is going to be in play. So that's this scenario that I'll be watching very closely starting tomorrow. There's more to talk about for next week. I'm showing you the GFS model. If you remember yesterday, we talked about how the European model tried to develop a little something down there in the Southwest Caribbean. Well, the GFS model is still not showing there being an actual tropical system, but the next surge of moisture begins to move in. And at least on this one, and I'm going to take this out 2 more days, because I can, to be quite honest. We're going to go out 2 more days because I want to show you what the GFS is doing. Now, I get that we're getting a little bit farther out in time here. We're like in days 11 and 12, but you can see this next surge coming in at the very end of May into early June, and it's trying to go a little bit farther north into the west. Now, there's actually going to still be a lot of wind here in the Central Caribbean that could rip apart any systems trying to develop, but there's a big void right here where we could see something. That's the next thing I'll be watching late May into early June. And again, the European model still shows a chance of a tropical depression. Now, it's lower than what it was yesterday, 10 to 20% right in this kind of very void area of wind in the Southwest Caribbean. And if you notice, there's another area there in the Pacific. We're right on 10 degrees latitude. And the European model has several systems is trying to develop at 10 degrees latitude. That one in the East Pacific, the one in the Southwest Caribbean, and there's another one in the Atlantic Basin with about a 10 to 20% chance. It's just trying to make the 10 degree latitude line very, very active. So something to watch out for again at the end of May. Something you can watch out for, friends, is Meteo Mundo across all of social media. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, X, Facebook. Send me a picture or video at mymeteomundo@gmail.com. Of course, if you have a specific question about the forecast, all you got to do is drop it in the comment section below. I'm happy to answer that. Let me know where you're viewing from, what the weather has been like. Has it been hot and dry, or are you getting prepared for some of that heavier rain moving your way? Friends, again, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for getting us to over 10,000 subscribers. Onward and upwards from here. You have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow with the latest right here at Meteo Mundo.